Secret.
We'll move
Secret.
forward. The next thing on the agenda was I wanted you all to give an update on the elementary camp conference, which will happen in April, and I have heard nothing but positive things.
It happened, and Steve Burns there, Greg was there, Steve was Steve was there. He's setting up everything. So it worked out fine. I think we had over 200 kids there. I had a larger number of non-responses this year. As far as I said, I had nearly 40 kids from 4th grade and about 40 from 5th grade who did not turn in their forms. And so I'm not sure what happened this year differently from the other years, other than there was that break just before that time. And usually I'm able to give the information back to the schools 2 weeks before, and so maybe the teachers can kind of follow up on it a little bit more, or the principals can follow up. I know Kathy's really good about following up on your kids. But I had quite a bit of kids, and so I'm not sure from the principals whether or not they, it was just something that they didn't get a chance to get to. I mean, I sent it to the principals and the secretaries that Monday morning, because I worked on it during the break, and whether or not they got a chance to forward it to their teachers or not and had time to. I know some did a lot of hoofing it and try to get as many kids as I know Judy tried. Judy
email parents and
Right.
So I think what would help is if I know as a teacher it is hard to track down students individually, because I had students who, because I'm the gate teacher, they gave the form to me and put it in my box, and I didn't check my box for those forms, and so they turned it into me, and they should turn it into the office. And if some way, like I don't know how to make it more clear than it is in bold, but that it really should just go straight to the office, because that's where a lot of forms from Castro got lost. I mean, eventually they all got turned in, or except for 2, but that sort of, it goes to the office, and if it could be kept somewhat in the office, I think the teachers.
I have special folders for it.
But I'm just saying, like the contacting of parents, if we can somehow streamline it so that it's more in the office and less on the teachers. Just because I think they are a lot of them are out of the loop to begin with, and they don't know what it is.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be involved. It's really the site, and we actually mailed it directly home.
That's all I thought.
Then we mailed the invitations directly to the kids' home, and it's very clear on there. It says it's supposed to go to the
It's weird. I saw that too.
So, yeah, I don't know how to fix. I think Gate. They think you.
Yeah. And so it's fine. I mean, we got Judy does her magic, but I think like if there's some way in which, I mean, you do a great job. I'm not saying you're doing a terrible job.
No, I'm just
you're
curious.
doing a really fantastic. Like I feel like the fact that you can get it back on that Monday, given that time, but somehow make it such that the office staff can.
Well, it's sent to the office staff. So the other thought was maybe we have 3 new principals. I mean, but I never sent it to the middle school, so I had to count that out. So we have Stevenson and New and Huff that's new. So maybe I didn't get a chance to clarify with them. Could you follow up on these kids? So that's another thing I could have.
Did you do an auto dialer?
No.
That might be something to remember.
But I don't. How would I? Regina would have to do that,
Just sort of do our
and she would have to click on those names. Oh, that's a good idea, Phyllis. An auto dialer.
Another email the documents to the secretaries, and then they can email it to the parents as well. That's how Judy got a lot.
That would have been good for Stevenson. That would have been good for Stevenson. We get a lot of stuff from via email.
So if you email it as an attachment, they can do a
the auto dialer
PDF.
does an email too. It does it both.
So that would be really.
Because our school, we have a problem with the emails. We have a lot of parents that don't have.
But
the auto dialer does both.
Set up on an auto dialer. Auto email.
It does both.
So just as many different ways of contacting.
Everybody got a letter too.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone got
Yeah,
gets
they've all already got the paper copies. Turning it in. That's
If their address is correct, they got the letter.
Yep.
So that might just be a way to have a reminder, like a couple of days ahead of time, get your registration in.
Well, it was fine because a lot of the classes only had 20, 25 kids compared to a pack 30, 35 kids in there, and so I think it was nice.
Yeah, it was.
This year, right?
I enjoyed teaching the kids that I had.
Yeah, it was a lot smaller group to work with than the other years, but it's fine, I mean, everybody's, capable of, the only one I try to keep smaller is the ones run by parents. There's like 20 kids in there rather than, you know, fill it up.
Kind of you.
We're not trying to.
25 to 30 kids in there, so.
Did you get any feedback from kids? Like, you didn't do a survey or anything like that?
I tried before one time, and you did that before the ice cream, and I was okay, I want, you know, and then they would just, you know, really do it really fast, and the thing is, what am I gonna do with it? And then, what I did is I actually did ask them at the when they all gathered together before, speaker Jim Wilton spoke, if they enjoyed at least one of the workshops, and everybody raised their hands for at least one of them. And I could add, so many of the kids said, well, yeah, I didn't like that one, but I really liked the other one. So it seems like they at least got something that they enjoyed, which is good. I don't know if you guys got any feedback.
Love the speaker.
See, so I'm not even sure what
I
I'm
didn't
asking
get the-
back.
I didn't, for that large of a group,
Yeah.
it seemed a very not effective speaker. I think
Yeah, that's what
with
I
the
thought too.
storyteller, he was engaging the entire time, but with Jim Milton, it seemed like he was trying to teach them something.
He was trying to
And
teach
with
them
that number of students, it was very hard for them to be engaged, cause he's like talking really quickly, he's like, I have 6 things to remember if you wanna be a good writer, and it's like, I was engaged cause I can listen for an hour, but.
Can you remember the 6 things?
I don't remember.
Maybe got about 4 deep in it before we got distracted, so.
Yeah, but it was very,
We got through.
yeah, I mean, I think the attention was there, but I think the learning objective wasn't met.
Yeah.
And whereas with the other guy, I can't remember his name right now.
Michael
Katz.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a storyteller and he told a story and the kids were engaged the entire time. So just contrasting those two, Michael Katz was I felt a better option, or something like that was a better option to pursue.
Yeah, so,
Maybe he would be better to do a session rather than.
Yeah, Jim Milton has done sessions there, but.
Maybe he'll be better off doing that.
or no. But yeah, so that, I thought it was fine. I think next year, if we still keep, you know, we do still have identified the kids as certain kids at skate, that we could still probably, you know, still do it next year. The year after, I don't know whether we're going to, you know, do any identification. If that's not gonna happen, then we'd have to figure out another formula. Maybe, you know, invite 30 kids from each school or something like that, or 40 kids from each school, and try to, you know, do it that way, or rather than it being a,
Well, I think we're gonna get to that discussion. We're gonna get to that discussion. Are we good with the gate conference? Yes? Okay, so I just wanted to do a little brief update about summer school. We had originally moved ahead with trying to run the Camp Invention through the district as a district-sponsored program for GATE students. And with all of the new laws about fees versus donations, we could not get an MOU worked out with Camp Invention that was gonna hold us harmless from fees. But Camp Invention is gonna offer the program. They're offering the program at Landals. And they've opened it up on a fee basis. They're paying facility use fees in the program. And what we did do is send a letter to all of the GATE families 3 through 5 to let them know that Camp Invention was there and that they could sign up for the program. And I don't know, as you recall, we ran it last year on a donation basis, and our problem was we came up about $8,000 short in donations to cover the cost of the program. So we decided to go this route, and Gail's gonna be running it again for Camp Invention over at Landals, and it's gonna be the week of June 10th for 5 days.
but then it's also gonna be open, right now, the flyer's gonna be open to all the kids in the district.
Right.
So 1st through 6.
How many students?
Right now, I only have, less than 30 kids right now. Last year we had 65 kids or so.
What's your top?
Well, I'd like to know more than 100. So we'll see what happens. It's kind of late notice, and so it's kind of, if they free that week, people will probably sign up. If they're not, then it's gonna be difficult. I need as much recycled stuff as possible from, if you guys wanna save your recycled things, like, you know, Kleenex boxes and wrapping papers and what else? I mean, even broken electronic goods. There are some things that they don't want, like they don't want monitors, things that have some poison,
Mercury.
mercury, yeah, stuff in there. But part these items. So hopefully they're broken items or things that you don't want to. So if you have those things, start saving them for me.
No cell phones.
Yeah, remote controls are great, and they're the most difficult thing to open, right? Those little remote controls, you know, TV remotes. Everybody has like
a hammer to them.
no, we have hammers.
It's harder than that.
It's hard.
We got ours open here. I got it open. Did you? Yeah, cause we did a whole recycle thing.
What's the amount of that?
It's $270 for a whole week, and it's 6 hours a day.
And it's fun.
And compared to many of the other camps, many of my parents were telling me that's the cheapest camp they've ever seen for that many hours and for a whole week worth.
$270 a week, 6 hours a day?
Yeah.
How many?
Closest 5.5 hours.
Hours a day, and
It's 8:30 to
June 10th through.
It's
Like,
14th.
comparatively, it's fine.
Has there been discussion of other organizations wanting to offer this kind of tinkering or design camp? Because I know that it sounds very similar to what Khan's offering at Los Altos for their Khan in the summer, and the last summer they offered as well as this tinkering camp in the summer, and I didn't know if there have been other organizations that have said, would we like to offer?
Kathy or Gail would be able to answer that.
What's the question?
Have there been other organizations that have been interested in offering summer activities for that organization? I noticed that Khan is doing their tinkering camp in Los Altos, and I didn't know if other organizations have asked to use our school district.
I do not deal with that piece. If they ask on a facilities and a PU space, they go through the business department. So I don't know. The reason Camp Invention is involved is because we used them last year for Camp.
Did they sought us or we sought?
We sought them out last year for the purposes of GATE. So if other groups want to use our facilities, then they work through the facilities and through the district, through the business department.
So yeah, we would have to seek out other things if we wanted an alternative, I think is what happens. They didn't find us, we found them.
For middle school, we are gonna continue to offer the middle school, GATE program it's gonna be over at Graham. There's 2 sessions, 2 weeks in June. That is being run on, it's the similar camp that Tom Sayer has run, kind of videography and the aspects of making videos and different pieces like that. And he's done it for the last several years. He's doing it again. That is running off parent donations. So if there's enough parent donation, then the camp runs, and if there's not, then the camps do not run. At this point, it looks like it will move forward. We have, I think 30 kids sign up for each session as of today. So that will move forward. Okay, into the big pieces. So GATE identification, funding, programming, and advisory, which we will probably talk about a little bit kind of all together as we move forward. For GATE identification, I just wanted to kind of give you an update. We did, as of our last meeting, we had shared the numbers based on the new assessment results. We did send letters. I did field many calls because there were kids who had made the qualification on the original test in the fall and did not make the qualification on the test in the spring.
How did they know that?
Because they got a letter.
It said you made the first test but not the second
The
one?
letter, no, because the letter in the fall said, based on your results, you would have been eligible, but you will be retested in the spring. And in the spring, we sent a letter, yes, you're eligible, no, you're not, based on the results. So, I personally talked to most parents on the phone or via in my office to talk through the situation. And I think everyone dealt with it okay, at least when they were talking to me on the phone. They were pretty understanding. I only had a couple people call me not very nice things, but it was okay. We found a couple discrepancies. We found a couple kids who didn't bubble in their tests correctly because it was a bubble in a Scantron, and so anybody that had a really kind of off score compared to where they were, I did go back and hand look at all of those tests just to make sure we weren't missing anybody because I thought that was fair. So we did have a couple of discrepancies there that added a couple of numbers to our scores. I do want to say I did find it interesting in these conversations with parents, and I had several parents tell me about how they practiced the test online and how they had gone to this specific website and bought the test and freely admitted to me that they were studying for the test. So it was a very interesting.
How many did that?
I have to look back at my notes, but I had probably 4 or 5
Okay.
of my conversation.
And you shared with them at that point that it was not a test to study for as much as it was
I did.
and they were surprised?
They basically just didn't agree. They felt like that they,
But nobody
this is
tells,
what they,
nobody tells the parents ahead
this
of
is
time
what
not
they
to do
wanted
that. Yeah,
to do.
it's just,
Right.
it's not a, yeah.
It's just their
Yeah.
instinct
Yeah,
to
it's
just
kinda-
test and study.
Right, yeah.
And
Yeah.
in this case,
It's
it's
kind
not,
of known though that IQ tests you don't study. I mean,
it's not supposed to help either,
yeah.
right? It's not supposed to
Well, if you
affect
study
you,
the
right?
exact test, it will help
Yeah,
you.
you memorize
You
it.
study the answers.
Yeah,
But I
that's
think
true.
I think we have to remember that we're only testing a piece, right? And I think with gait identification, I think the struggle is that no matter what assessment we use, so in our case we're using a nonverbal abilities test. So for our kids that are very strong visually, they're going to do well. But if we have kids that aren't strong visually, it may not. And so I think that therein lies some of the problem with identification is there's not a perfect tool. And I've looked all over the internet trying to find the perfect tool or what looked and researched and tried to see, and every district seems to use something different. And I think that's therein lies a little bit of a problem with trying to really figure out who are our truly gifted and talented kids based on an assessment. Right.
When I presented to the school site council at Stevenson a couple months ago after the March meeting, some people asked, what other identification, what else can we identify? If someone's very good artistically, or very good linguistically, is there a test we could use for that? Because I get the impression that Stevenson kind of likes to, if whatever a child is good at, we're gonna find it, and and then we'll help it flourish, etc. And we are just testing one dimension here. So do you know of any other? Should I go Google around and try to?
You are welcome to
And is
Google
it-
around. I think what we run into is when we start, I know back in the day, I got gait tested, but it was done one-on-one with a psychologist, and it was a full battery IQ test, so it tested all, more than just one area.
Oh,
But with the financial constraints, with what we're facing, with gait and with not having any identified money coming from the state, it's hard to find something that's not gonna be too overly time-consuming with personnel and kids and that sort of thing. So I think
so a normal battery does address all these many different dimensions of intelligence.
well, it addresses the auditory and the
At least
and the
those two.
visual, at least those
Okay.
two. But I mean, that can take anywhere from 3 to 6 hours.
How long does the test we did Ravens or the second one have?
This one was timed, it was 30 minutes.
That's pretty efficient, I
Yeah.
guess.
Right.
It produces an
It
immediate
worked.
result. Yeah.
Right.
It does bring up this interesting philosophical question of, do you spend more money on providing services to the gay kids, but maybe not catch all the gay kids, and maybe not probably identify all of them that we could catch, or do you spend more money on letting parents know exactly, having more accurate assessment, but then having less money for services? And then if we're coming from one pot, there's a philosophical question: is if I'm a parent, would I rather know that my child's properly assessed, or would I rather know that maybe a less accurate assessed group is getting more services if it's all money?
My big philosophical debate, and I feel like I've been coming to the meeting for 3 years now. It's the gate things that we do are all enrichment after school, parent provided. None of them seem to actually address the needs of gate students in terms of their academic, educational, that type of growth. And it seems like a moot point to identify a kid if all they're going to do is get robotics after school, because at Graham and Crittenden, they're going to get robotics whether they're gay or not, if they're interested in it. So I think that's sort of like, why are we gate identifying if we're not actually going to meet the needs? I mean, are we meeting the needs of our kids that are gate? Does that make sense? It's just very.
How could I find out what the right programming would be for those kids?
I think it's in school. A part of it's in school. What do you do in the classroom to meet the needs of students? And I think that's a bigger debate, because then that's more training. I mean, he was getting into, do you spend more money on the the programs, or do you spend more money on the testing? It's like if I identify a kid and he's gay, that's great, but what do you do with that? Like identification in terms of, you know, after school, you have your, I mean, there's the cohort argument that we can talk about, and that's great, but I just feel like we constantly talk about these things, but none of them are gate activities. Even what we do at Castro isn't really a gate activity. And we even have non-gate students who participate at the same level.
I think from a parent perspective, with full agreement that what has currently been happening is not gay. So the reason to have the assessment is to capture the parents who may not know that their child has these leanings, and they can maybe support their child more join Lyceum or some of these other things that provide that kind of thing. And potentially as a district, if you know that your numbers are a certain way, then you can accommodate. But given the expense, you know, I don't know that it's worth it. But that would be why, from a parent perspective, would be helpful.
Can I just share one? Remember I said at our school we did not wait to hear the results. We just went ahead and just found I think a 500 mark on either they in language arts or math, and they reached that. Then we just kind of grabbed, and it turned out about 30 kids. I said that's about good. I can handle 30 kids. And then I looked back at the list and cross-checked it after I got the gate list, and I found that I missed 4 kids.
Pretty close.
Out of 20.
That's pretty good.
Out of 20. So that's not bad. I feel like that's not bad at all. So it was, and then still parents are still asking, is it something that they can? I said, if you're interested in the DI program, it's something that you're interested in, then you're welcome to join it. So I think that it could. I mean, there could be programs where we could, you know, there's room for other ways of providing services for kids.
Well, I think we've had a lot of conversation around this over the course of the last year. And, you know, as we move forward, I think as a district we're really looking at moving forward as not formally identifying kids starting next year. I have some, you know, we've talked a lot, but I do have some concerns that I don't think the test that we're using, like I said, is going to catch all of our kids, but I also don't think the test that we're using is going to stay a test that people are going to go on to testingmoms.com and pay $20 for it and buy.
Testingmoms.com.
That's it. That's one.
Okay. Is there one for dads? Can I use that?
You can use it too. That just happens to be one of the websites
Never heard of
I found that offers all of the assessments for.
Are you serious? There really is a
Yes, testingmoms.com. You can get the WISC, which is the full blown IQ
yeah.
test. You can get Ravens. You can get the test we used. You can use everything on that website for a very small amount of money.
You sound like a saleswoman.
I know.
Product.
Well, I've learned a lot about this year. My feet have been in the fire all year long. With that being said, however, what we've talked about is that, you know, we have been trying to run this program and offering gate type activities and giving the site some money to do programming with a very small amount of money over the course of the last 2 years, 3 years. With that being said, I think if we move forward in this route, what we'd like to do is give each site an allocation of $10 per student, K through 5 or 6 through 8, which would be way more money than what sites are getting now. Currently, we're getting about $1,100 or $2,300 at the middle school to run programs for academic challenge or gate type activities.
I'm confused about that number because I know there's a stipend paid to some of the teachers, which isn't part of that money, plus the testing, which isn't part of that. So,
What do you mean?
the testing costs money,
Right.
for the district, and then don't you pay a stipend to the teacher at the school who's the point of contact?
We don't pay for
No.
that other part.
That's school by school.
School by school.
Okay.
What's it cost to run the test? District-wide.
I can give you the cost of just buying materials, and the new test was $1,500, not counting the psychologist's time and my admin's time.
So $1,500, you get a license to use it for 1 year, or you can use it.
I bought
Year to
enough
year.
to test the kids that we had.
Oh, and if you wanted to test twice as many kids, it's
I had
twice
to
as much.
purchase more materials.
So it's per head. That number is like divided by 300.
Depends, it depends, right. I bought enough to test the kids that I had, because I wasn't testing a full 600 kids
Okay.
this year.
So you pay by the copy. So you don't just, I wasn't sure if the district just bought it once, it could
Well, we can continue to use it, I just wouldn't have enough, I'd have to buy more to handle 600 kids. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
so you can use the same 600 one year and then the next. Get new Scantron sheets.
But
Don't write in books.
Yes.
But because the name would get out there, then we
That's
change. That's
We'd have
the
to, yeah.
problem.
we'd
The
have
name
to-
is already out.
The name is out.
It's on testing moms.
Well, not just that, but then the kids use the test booklet, and so the name is there.
I guess that's true, but SAT, everything.
Right.
Right.
But the
Every test
SAT
has
isn't
one.
on public.
Change it.
The CST isn't online. I can't go there and study it.
It's
And they
not on
changed-
testing mom. I bet the CST's on testing mom.
They change 50%
No.
of the questions on the CST.
And they change the questions on the CST every year, 50%. So no, you
So that's
can't,
one way
that's a
to do
state
it.
run, that's a state run test, you can't get a hold of that one. You can get a hold of what the state has released to you,
But that's online.
but that's online anyway, that's all.
And they're different, they're completely different types of tests, the CST and the WISC and the.
Absolutely. So,
Interesting.
anyway, so to continue with my thought as I move forward, because I wanna get all of my thought out and then we can talk it through. So, it would be a $10 per student, allocation from the district. So that would be somewhere in the neighborhood, depending on the school, $4,500 to $6,000 to $8,000, depending on what school. Am I right?
Yeah.
Is my math on, cause I'm
Yeah.
tired today,
Yeah,
it's been a long day.
Times 10
Um,
$6,000.
So, for schools to continue to run academic enrichment programs and to add to and boost what they're already doing. With that, the sites would then have to have a gate plan or an academic enrichment plan that would have to be created by the principal and or the parent group in tandem that would then be overseen and signed off by me. That I would work with them to make sure I was involved in that piece and how the money was being spent. And with that, you could use that money not only to offer programs that would be open for all kids to participate, but you could also put parameters onto your program. For example, at the, they have some programs that they expect certain CST scores or certain interest levels so that you could be, targeting the groups that you wanted with your program. So there'd be some flexibility with that. And then we would also still look at running the elementary gate conference, would be district funded. And part of the goal, the work of the gate advisory committee would be to not only structure the gate conference and how we would do it and how we would make sure that we brought kids to that conference from all sites, but also we would work on parent education next year, as well as this issue around how do we, when we have these high performing kids, how do we work on what's happening in the classroom to make sure we meet their needs. So that would be really work of our gate advisory body that would continue to move forward. I don't think I've forgotten anything, so now I wanna hear from.
One concern that came up, is how to handle the funding, because is the hope that the $4,500 would cover the cost of the academic enrichment through the whole year?
Well, and you could actually, if you wanted to fundraise at your site specifics could continue to do that.
So there was a concern with the PTA president that there's now a conflict, and I don't know how to, we have PTA meeting Wednesday and the gated, our landlord's gate advisory meeting Thursday, so.
Okay, what,
How, that there was a new California bill that had passed that we could not have even fee-based activities that turned anyone away, or that had a requirement.
fee-based, right, but
Mhm.
you can ask for a donation, but we cannot, and that was one of the issues we had with Camp Convention, you cannot require fees for students to participate in activities. Fees.
If they're
And so what-
officially run by the
Yeah.
school.
Right.
But if, can I?
Yeah, go
No,
ahead.
finish.
If Camp Invention, so it's Camp Invention, wants to come and do something every Friday, they can do that, but it would be separate from the gate, or the academic enrichment. Right, because you can still do fee-based activities at the school.
But
Yes,
What's the distinction?
it's that they're paying the
It's
company.
not part of the school.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't go through the
Districts,
school
yeah.
or the district.
Right. Yes, district school sponsored activity, that's what you're talking about, right?
yeah, so they'd have to pay the facilities fee.
Right.
That's the
That's the
difference.
key,
They would
yeah.
have to go to the business office,
Yeah.
and that's what's happening over the summer.
For the summer.
So
They
to
have-
help you in terms of, I think what you can do is that you say we want to have Camp Invention come every Friday. We need this amount of money. as a school, we have to raise this amount of money, so those people who can afford it may not give as much, but they need to know that we need $1,400 for this program to work at our school, and you donate as much as you can. If not, we won't have a program at all. I think that's what you can do, and that's what some sites are doing.
And it's actually, it is kind of scary, but we actually do it with our after-school sports program now at the middle school. We no longer collect after-school sports fees, it's after-school sports donations, and we say just that we need this money to keep this program running for buses, coaches, etc. And please donate. And we give kind of what we'd like to give.
And the money channels through the PTA.
Well, sports is different, but I was just giving the example of
So this
what you have to do in order to.
this particular money would not channel through the PTA. This would be at the site discretion.
The 45.
Or whatever, it would be based on
Whatever,
your
yeah,
students.
the whatever,
Yes.
the $10 per student.
Yes, that would funnel
Sorry.
through the school.
The school, which,
PTA.
I haven't done the budget on this before, is that going to cover all year of enrichment?
Well, currently you're getting $1,150. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So this would cover definitely more than what's covering now, because that's all the contribution has been. So this increases the contribution greatly.
Okay.
Now PTA can still continue to offer activities as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope.
Well, actually, that's was the amount we used to give before even, when we, before we even had parent donations. We just would happen to keep the same amount, or we increased some of the middle school amounts there. But, yeah, that was the same, about the same amount we did give to schools. So it's been about the same.
Well, and I would like to see the advisory really take on a couple of the roles, the issues. You know, I think the parent education piece is important. I think that's an important piece to get out. I also think this idea of having some conversation about what can we do with our kids in our classrooms, because really, that's really, when you have those kids in your room that need extra, whether it be musically or whether it be because they're very auditory or they're visual, I think teachers, we don't always focus on that. I think that's a good role for us to have as we move forward in talking about how do we enhance that educational piece for our kids, because we do spend time talking about intervention, but intervention needs to be for all kids.
Do we provide it, I'm just trying to get a context, do we provide any GATE training to our teachers, like historically, PD on
There have been offerings that have been
differentiation?
optional.
We've had some, yes, we've had historically some optional offerings that teachers have been able to opt into. HUF has done quite a bit with depth and complexity training, and Bub has participated in some of that as well, but we have not done it on a district-wide level. So I think it's a good opening for conversation, because all of our schools have kids that need it.
The reason I bring it up is that there's this whole movement now of all these online courses, and then there's some buzz now of schools that have the ability now for teachers to be able to take online courses that don't cost, versus PD used to be very expensive and you had to bring teachers out, but these massive online courses, there's companies that offer things like differentiation and things, and teachers just go online and take an online course for free.
Yeah, but I think the concern is they're still spending their time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, the district paid you to go to some of these
Right.
trainings, like it's like a $25 per hour training, and people wouldn't go because it's on the weekend, that's the only time you have. So it's a time commitment. I think any way we can alleviate the amount of work the teachers have to do to prepare would be great. Speaking as a teacher, if you had some sort of, here are activities that have been GATE approved, I guess, and like a playbook, like here are some opportunities for you to do, here are some things that you could do with your kid. If we could come up with something like that, that would, I think, help teachers a lot. I mean,
Has that something this committee's ever done?
no, I mean, I think we never
We've
did that
never
because
tried to,
Curriculum.
enter the teacher arena because it seems like that's a bigger part that we definitely had no money to deal with, but yet, and we didn't know how much say so we would ever have to just our advisory committee. But I've always been trying to push Meredith to have one of the staff development days. Because remember one time we had an ELD staff development day where teachers got to go to wherever classes they wanted to go to, just kind of like a choice conference type workshop, and it was really fun. And then I was thinking, oh gosh, wouldn't it be fun to have a GATE one where the instead of just starting right out with, you know, you saying, okay, I want you to start right in and I want you to use these things and I want you to make sure you have good discussions with them, but without giving them some tools with it, I think it's gonna be hard for them to kind of ramp up to learn the content and also to learn, you know, how to do something. For some people it might be easy, but some people it may be a very different shift in their teaching paradigm.
There's definitely going to be shifts, and I think as we work to create a transition plan that's going to be kind of a living document, I think we're going to have to think about instructional practice and what practices we use as we move to Common Core.
Will there be, you were mentioning the guidelines for, you know, school sites can still, they have a program that they want to do some kind of limited offering, they can still do some kind of selection process. Will the district be providing any kind of a guidance on how they do that? Because I think that, it's, you know, we were already nervous that the assessment we have, you know, isn't fully capturing and might be giving an improper label. And I think that now we, you know, as we are democratizing the process and letting school sites kind of do self-selection, that can be perceived from a child as a label, right? Like it's saying, okay, there's a special math program after school and you need a certain CSD to do that. And then we're not calling it GATE, but then if I'm a child and I say, okay, the GATE is offering this program and you have to reach a certain, I mean, so we are basically giving kind of school sites the ability to pseudo-label their kids if the guidelines aren't properly done.
Well, and I think that's why I would have oversight, and I think each school would have to create a plan, because that's the piece that we would really want to look at. And I think, you know, when I was principal at Montalona, when we started looking at our, you know, higher achieving kids, we offered programs like Destination Imagination that were open to everybody, and then we looked at some of our kids with great talent in math, and we offered Math Olympia for them, and then we had our kids that were really interested in reading, we had book clubs for them. So what we tried to do was have enough things that hit interest levels for kids, where kids would be, you know, interested in, and there could be some aspect of teacher recommendation and support that way.
There's also the ability during the school day with the tablets and such to take the learning to the next level, like with Khan Academy and things like that. And then another thing that was talked about is that some of the fee-based programs, if they have something at Huff that I think my son's going to be interested in and they don't have it at Landell's, you can actually go to Huff and pay the fee and participate, which then addresses some of the cohort issues. Is that correct?
We'd have to have that conversation.
So that's another part of the conversation.
That would have to be another part of the conversation.
Best practices. Like any collaboration between the schools, obviously sharing best practices, and then any sort of collaborative things we can do to mix the kids up would be good.
Does that ever happen now? Is there, if a particular program's only offered one school site, that a parent
I think when Pact first split from Castro, we had a few game nights together because the year before they were together, and so we had a few game nights with the Pact students because one, they had a small program, and we split like a few years after that, but we did have a Pact in Castro.
But for here, just take Stevenson and Fairclough.
I've never heard of any interaction between these two schools. I don't know why that is. I didn't set it up that way. But I mean, I take it back. Our performances happen in the Fairclough auditorium. That's the only time I've been over there. So if there were ways for something interesting and differentiated that's being offered, it's not big enough to offer to every school, but it's big enough to offer one school and invite other schools, kids from other schools that are interested or whatever, or selected for. I think that's something we should explore. I don't know why we wouldn't want to do that.
Or like,
go ahead.
I noticed that Stevenson had H26 Valencia come and do, does everyone know what that is? Dave Eggers has a nonprofit. The storefronts are fantasy-based. The one in Brooklyn is Brooklyn Superhero Supply. Here it's Pirate Shop. They also come out and teach. Behind the secret door is basically support, tutoring, and trying to make it interesting for the kids and not about only being work, but put the imagination in. But Stevenson had them come out, and I think they made a book that day. But if there's a group coming out, if the advisory board lets people know about it, maybe we can get a less expensive price if they have a whole week of activities to come out here and do things that different school sites, and that's another way to increase the visibility in the classroom that addresses all the kids, but gives, you know, the ones who are leaning that way more information.
Well, I think that's the role we play as the advisory, is to try to bring that expanded communication and collaboration.
So, as we've been talking about the different groups of kids, the different programs would apply to, this is from the GATE website, the California Department of Ed. They talk about developing unique educational opportunities for high achieving and underachieving pupils in California public elementary secondary schools who have been identified as gifted and talented. So without a GATE identification, I don't know how are we supposed to find those? How are we supposed to find them without any assessment?
I think the problem is they don't identify how we should assess them.
So that's a meta problem, but given a way to identify gifted and talented, you can find low achieving gifted kids and help them and turn them around or something, find out what will pull them into education. Because in theory, someone who is gifted and talented intellectually can be turned on to learning things. Because it should be, you know, the serotonin or whatever should be flowing when they start figuring stuff out they care about.
Right.
So I'm just kind of worried that those kids are getting left out in the cold. And
Interesting.
so what are we supposed to do about that?
So I have a question, are those kids being caught right now? With our GATE identification, are we finding kids who are underachieving because one of the cutoffs is the CST, right? We're not finding kids who are underachieving to begin with. So the process we have currently is not doing what you're saying.
Sounds flawed currently, yeah. Sounds currently flawed.
Yeah, so it's currently flawed, so continuing to currently flawed doesn't address that issue to begin with. So we have to rethink, if we're gonna identify and we want to achieve that goal, we have to rethink the test or whatever methods we use. Because I feel like from a teacher's perspective, I know that I hear the parents' arguments, I just don't see how identifying the kids is helping them during the school day and even after school. I mean, there are enrichment opportunities that do exist or can exist for all the kids and be beneficial based on interest. I mean, the kid who is underachieving is turned on by robots, offering it as a program, whether he's been identified or not, he'll go to that robot class, or will push them, and the teacher sees those things and tries to push. I guess that's where
This is an argument against assessment.
Huh?
This is an argument against any form of assessment, right? Because the teacher should be able to figure it out.
No.
On the fly, and
I'm not
without
arguing
assessment.
for or against assessment. I just don't think that what you're saying here is being achieved by the process.
I agree. We should have a better process.
Nobody's saying that.
We should have a better process today, and not a worse process tomorrow that has no chance of.
It's not arguing to keep the same process, it's more about, we're at ground zero, you know, freedom's another word for nothing left to lose. It's gone, like, we're starting over from scratch, we're creating. And how do we create the best possible program, where the teachers feel supported, where the students feel supported.
I feel in the middle school the electives are catching that, because I'm thinking of a girl who's musically gifted and underperforming in math, but has the scores. So I know she's underperforming, just by not work completion and stuff like that. But then when you watch her perform on stage, it's a totally different kid, and you can see why she qualifies, because she's musically gifted.
Qualifies. Tell me which qualification.
She's gate classified, but if you look at her performance in the classroom, you wouldn't.
It only shows in music. I mean, so
When
far.
she's on stage, it is a completely different child, but her test scores are high too. It's just her actions in class don't match it. So that's what I think of when I think of an unperforming kid. I have her in my mind, because when she sings, it is just amazing to watch. It's a completely different kid than I see in my math class.
Is it possible then that by moving away from the labels, the only child that really might be hurt by not having any labels are the underperforming students and the low socioeconomic students, that label might have been another way to identify and catch the students. So you know, like if we're looking at kind of the spectrum of all the people who are engaged, the ones who we did identify who were kind of diamonds in the rough that we didn't know through previous assessments, that's kind of like the one area that we'll be losing as we move away from assessment, because we've lost one more way of potentially catching helping that family see that potential or a child see that potential in themselves in that underperforming area. And I don't know if there's a way where, I don't know if I don't know if there's ways where we can still kind of, and I don't even know how common that is.
That's what I was gonna say. I'd like to somehow pull some data on that, but I don't know if that's even
Well, I
possible,
think
right?
I think we shared the data with
The numbers?
the numbers.
Except we
as
use
well,
the
so you-
CST cutoff the opposite direction. Like Vern pointed out.
Yeah, I mean,
If
the
your CST
CST
wasn't
still
high
count.
enough,
Right.
then you didn't make it,
Yeah.
right? And so Chris is talking about your CST is down here, but your IQ or whatever is up here.
Yeah,
And
but
so-
also I think the kids, correct me if I'm wrong, but the kids who scored well on the test that I don't know the name of it, even the Ravens, the kids who were scoring really well on that, most of the kids who scored really well on that also scored really well on the CST to begin with. There were not many kids who scored just high enough on the Ravens or the CST in their, or just on the Ravens in the new test you did, that didn't score on the CST. So there
the
was,
question is, what is that number for not many?
like
That's-
one. I mean, it's like literally one kid.
Okay.
And that's one kid should matter, but I just feel like their CST score wasn't far below basic or below basic. They weren't. It was just not perfect. The cutoff. I mean, I'm a little fuzzy because it's been years since we really talked about how we do it. But the cutoff, it's like as the Raven scores was really high, the CST could be lower, but there was a point where the CST. I mean, you had to be proficient. So I don't think our current system was catching those students. And in elementary school, maybe she was well performing and something happened in middle school, home life, who knows? Something happened to that girl. But what I guess I'm wondering is if we can't create a system for identifying that really captures those kids, then why are we identifying using this expensive method to identify these kids when we can do it in a different way that's less expensive and gives money for the kids to use.
Less expensive, where are you referring to?
Not having them
Not
test
test.
for
So,
it.
so what would that look like? How would that?
So like I use what I know at Castro. We have the kids who are identified as gay, but then we go in and we talk to the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade teachers and we lay out the criteria. Here are the things that we're doing in gay. Are there kids in your class that you see they may be performing below grade level in some areas, but they fit this type of student. They're interested in these types of things that we're doing, and those are the kids we invite. They come, they check it out. If they like it, they come. If they don't like it, they don't come. And so you capture a lot of students, and right now we're studying Australia. We've studied Egypt, China. We've done some rocketry. They've gone on tours to NASA, the NASA Research Center in San Jose. They've done all these activities. Not all of them are gate, and they really don't know. We call it Summit Club. They don't know which ones are really gate identified and which ones aren't, especially in 3rd grade. And it's just you capture the kids where they're interested. And then we have the other after school activities. So there's a teacher who teaches sign language. There's a teacher who, and this is part of the PTA.
So the PTA funds, because
those
what I'm
are their
hearing is
activities.
part of the advisory board per site, not district wide, but per site needs to be a really strong teacher advocate. Because you two participate directly in the screening, but at the other sites we don't have that. Right?
No, I actually don't participate. The screening.
Well, you said we, so who goes?
So I am the we in that.
You coordinate?
I am the teacher for it, but in terms of the screening, it's the test that they have, and then Jenna, who's my parent, who teaches the class, she goes and we. I mean, it's we because I forward the email to her, but it's here are the students. She hands out the paperwork. She collects the.
So she goes to every teacher.
In 3rd through 5th, because that's when we.
Right, 3rd through 5th.
3rd through 5th, and say here's the criteria for what we do. Do you have kids who meet that?
But you have the PTA pay teachers to teach after school programs?
So that's a different thing. For Summit, it's a gate club, and I get paid through the gate funds.
We're kind of done with the gate part and talking about the bigger picture. So
Yeah, well, I'm
I
just
guess
saying.
that's why I'm not clarifying.
What I'm saying is what we currently have is that the gate funds fund me
Uh-huh.
as the teacher
To do
in the
Summit
class to do the Summit Club. But there are other classes that the PTA funds that also meet those kids' needs who aren't necessarily interested in the book clubs that we do or the rocket. They're interested in other things, and so there's some baking class. Those types of interests are met through other avenues that don't have this gate, CST strictly type thing.
I think what he's saying, I feel like I completely agree with this idea that the teachers who have that personal connection, or the adults who know their kids, that relationship, they are, I believe, probably more accurately finding the proper kids who want to take these activities than this kind of uniform test that we're currently using.
And this sort of criteria, this selection criteria is fine going forward. That'd be your
Selection
understanding.
criteria being,
Ask teachers which kids match this sort of thing. And I think
She's gonna sit with us and
and I'm
actually
gonna
come up.
sit, I think the plan would be that we would talk about it here. The schools would create a plan, but we would we'd lay out some sort of basic criteria for them, right? And the schools would create a plan, so we would have a plan. Then we could then look at each school and how they're doing, and we could share, so we could start to build that collaboration and best practice across the district.
So you don't know anything about how Castro's currently works, this system
Yes,
that we're
I do know about how Castro's works, but not every site does it the same way.
But my question was, does that way qualify under what you'd like to see next year? Does
Yes.
that way of doing it work?
That would still work.
That would work across.
They could still take the money that the district's providing and still run their summit club.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And other schools could
Emulate
have
that.
summer clubs.
Absolutely.
And they could just go and ask teachers, and I'd be interested to see the list of, whatever email you refer to that says, here's the sort of kids we're looking for. You got any of these?
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see that. Because I don't think we definitely don't do anything like that at Stevenson.
Right.
And I don't know if we want to do it, but I'd like to investigate.
And I think that would be our kind of focus here, right? So let's learn from each other as we venture into this new model, but then let's also pick some of the best things that are happening and share it, so that everybody isn't trying to recreate the wheel at their own site. Because I think that's what's happening now. Everybody's doing it on their own, in their own way, and that's good, but we need to figure out a way to better collaborate to take the best of that.
Well, it's actually not good because it's not gay. So,
Right.
how do we move forward, learn from what wasn't working, and really create a system that meets all the criteria we're talking about? Sorry, Shin.
No, I was just gonna say, last year, Mary had the schools get together and we gave each other copies of the classes we offered, and so everybody should still have those as something, as a basis to, at least to refer to. Not all the classes are gate, some of them were though. And the parents who provided them or the groups. And it's a good reference to at least start with anyway.
Well, there should there be a change in terminology of moving away from gate and gifted, as in, because we don't, under the way we're funding it, we don't necessarily need to follow, because the state doesn't fund this, so we don't have to follow the state code about how this is defined.
True, I was just referencing the kids that we didn't talk about.
So now that if it's not, because I think that would help the process of kids not feeling like this is some kind of pseudo label. If it's not called gifted at all, then that will help people clarify.
Is it Summit Club a label? How's it different?
Well, I just think gifted is a very specific label that when
Because the kids in Summit Club, when they go there, it's not like I'm a Summit kid, as opposed to I'm a gate kid. And when they get to like, are you gate? They will say things like, are you gate versus are
Do
you?
you do Summit? They can just say, do you do Summit?
Are you coming to Summit
come-
Club? And it's
Yeah, are you-
it's because
are you
it's
in
an
Summit?
open club. I guess it's like one of those things. It's like it's an open club. It doesn't come with a test that was given to it versus the gate is like, are you gate identified? Like I think the kids are savvier than we may be giving them credit for and saying like, it's like, are you just like, we do, I'll give you an example. So we do our, at Castro, we do rotation for math. So at this point I have the fifth graders who were doing a sixth grade math. The first day when they came to me, they thought they went to the wrong class because the other teacher had been doing the sixth grade class. So they were all like, I'm going to carry next year, I'm going to carry. And when they came to me, it's like, I'm in the wrong class. Because that label had been associated. They associated the teacher with the label of you're in the advanced math class. So they were able
It's
to.
just a shorthand, right?
Yeah, but with Summit, because it's an interest, it's more about interest than it is about intelligence, if that makes any sense.
But what you're talking about with the teachers identifying kids, that
But they
wasn't
don't
just-
know that that's why they've been identified. I mean,
I think we're not giving them enough credit.
you win.
No,
You win.
but is it still
I-
open, is it open to everybody when
It
no
is.
one asks the teachers to report
I
kids
think-
and then some other kid says, but I want to have it too?
Yeah, and if they want, I mean, I'll give you an example. We have a student who was identified through the gate process. Her brother, who I have as a student, he's not on the gate spectrum. He wasn't on the gate list. He was waiting for after school, after class. I said, hey, would you like to join our club? He's not necessarily a student that I would say is high achieving. He's actually he's very low achieving in some aspects. But he was there. I'm not going to let him sit outside of a classroom, and we help him along the way. I mean, he's inside the class helping, and he can do a word search about learning Australian terms. We can help him get to that point.
That's kind, and that's good.
I mean, and
instead of having a kid sit outside the room.
Yeah.
But if lots and lots of people kept showing up and saying, I want to join this too, and you say, well,
We'd
we
say
actually had a criteria.
we would say we need some other parents to come out and help,
Yeah.
because Jenna's, I mean, our capacity is 30 on some level. We have a logistical problem, but if we're going to have more kids, we need more helpers, and that's sort of where we would go with that. And I think we, when we added the third graders, there were more than we expected, because some of them, if they got the first letter, we allowed them in. We didn't just keep it to the kids who got the second letter.
Okay.
So we did have to say, hey, your brother's here, you can come too. I mean, that's essentially what was happening. A lot of them are siblings.
Is there a move to change the name of the committee and what Gabe's called?
I think we can have the conversation about it. I think I have to look into it to make sure that we are able to do that. Even though I know the state's not funding it, I think I have to make sure we can do that. So I can't, I'm not
Could just
gonna.
be the committee formerly known as Gabe.
Could be that,
Yeah.
I'll
Can't
just
work
make
out
it
the
simple.
acronym.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah.
No interest.
It sounds like we're going into next year, we're gonna be given money, we need to check in with you with our plans of what we're gonna do with that money. And if we do need to identify students, which we don't have the middle school, but then we also need to share that plan with you of how we're gonna do it. And at some point, we're gonna come together and share some of those ideas and check in how it's been going.
Right, but
That's
we are gonna, right now, as it stands, we're gonna move forward with not identifying. However, we are going to give this allocation of funds to each site with the expectation that the gate advisory, or whatever name we come up with, continues to meet, and we need to expand our roles so that we have representation from all schools, because currently we don't have that. That the advisory committee will take a role in supporting the plans, as well as the schools will create the plan, but we're gonna have to come up with some parameters around that. I will be definitely involved in everybody's plan, but then for the advisory piece, it will be looking at the plan, sharing best practices, working on parent education, as well as starting those conversations about how do we take and affect instructional practice for our kids. So it's not only these activities that we're doing, but how else are we supporting our higher achieving students.
What about the schools that aren't represented in this room? Huff has push-in or has stuff during the day anyway, so,
And they're currently meeting to talk about their enrichment program and how they're running that. They're currently working on that right now as we speak.
and then how do we learn their best practices?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I need to get representation from each site.
Okay.
So we're missing.
So that's a goal, okay.
We need to have, what would be fabulous is to have a parent and a teacher from each site. That's really what we need to have.
I feel like the change of the
You're
name
the
will
only
make-
one
You guys are
that's well
on a roll.
represented here.
I'm sorry.
And I think that'll broaden the number of parents that might want to be interested in participating in such community as you broaden the name, because like when it's gifted, a parent might go, oh, my child's not this, so I might not want to step up to this committee. But then with a new name, when you apply whatever role the name is, if it's more inclusive, then you might have more parents who want to participate.
You mentioned high achieving kids. That's who this is aimed at. What's the party line on gifted but not high achieving?
Well, we still need to meet their needs, right?
That's what I thought.
But I think.
I didn't hear the last one, you say gifted and what?
Gifted and
Underachieving.
low achieving.
Okay, I didn't hear the last part.
Because to me that seems like the Vern said there's one kid in that bucket, I don't know.
No, that was caught,
No.
that we've identified
Oh, okay.
using the
That we
process
caught
that we have.
using the
And so,
assessments.
to me, that seems like kids that, they can't come to the meeting. They don't know who they are, their parents don't know who they are.
Mm.
And they're gonna get nothing out of this program, because it's aimed at, kids that have identifiable gifts and, high achieving scores of one type or another.
But it
Without-
doesn't have to be. It can be
But-
aimed at kids that love music. It can be
Well,
aimed at
that's true.
kids
It can be,
that like robotics or like Legos. It doesn't have to
can be,
We-
but it's not the kids, those aren't the kids I'm talking about.
The kids I'm talking about are the ones the teachers don't like in general, because they're a little
They're
smart
disruptive
mouthed
or
and, yeah, they're
something, or they don't
disruptive,
care.
and
This school's
it's
super
applied
boring
to
for
a
them.
different concern than the fact that they have an IQ, so.
I think that's where the training and like the
Right.
guidelines can help school sites learn to be savvy and provide.
Well, and the parent education piece as well, I mean, if, you know, you're getting this report from the teacher, try these things, you know.
Well, and helping teachers learn how to identify the difference between, is it a smart mouth because the kid has a behavior problem, or is it an issue of the child is really tuned out because we're not meeting their needs academically?
And that's part of the RTI process too, those kind of kids, the RTI process where they come and I think teachers talk about kids like that and want to get support about how do I address those kids' needs. I think the teacher education piece is really important because, I mean, really it's really about making sure every kid gets their needs met, really, that's what you're saying.
Correct.
Right.
Explain RTI, cause you use
Oh.
a
Yeah, I
teacher
never-
I'm sorry.
I can ask you that.
It's called response to intervention and instruction, and it's a process where teachers meet together as a problem-solving group where we meet around students, any concerns either that either instructional needs aren't being met or their social emotional needs are not being met, and we gather together as a team to talk and problem solve about how to best meet their needs.
Mhm.
And then we provide interventions and then we look and see how we're intervening, is it working or not? And then if it's not, then do we need to change something or do we need to go another level of intervention?
Typically, the children don't receive interventions if they're above grade level.
It depends.
Or at grade level.
Or
It
at grade
depends.
level. I said typically, I mean,
Cause the next group is kids that are just kind of in the
that's
flow.
what I've been hearing
and
for
they
the
just-
3 years that.
They just pass, they get passing grades and everything, but they're brilliant, and they just don't wanna, for whatever reason, no one's expecting them to do anything special. But they have some 180 IQ, nobody knows that, they're totally dropped in this new program, as far as I can tell.
What Phyllis was talking about too, I think one of the things that helps is at all our sites, we do ELD, and so you've got more than one set of eyes on the child, so the classroom teacher might miss, the ELD teacher might see, and all you need is somebody who I teach first grade, knows all the names of dinosaurs, can tell their meat choices, how they hunted, well then you would know, and, just very poorly in math and, has no interest in the reading that comes out of the book, but has gleaned all this information, how, then the other teacher might see this in another classroom situation, and then those are the little cues to pick up.
Hopefully it works that way.
That then that
most
this
of the time.
child, could easily be on a gifted list, and so these things that would be offered after school might be enough to peck at that child, make them interested and see the
Mhm.
value then of, pulling themselves up by the bootstraps and having to go find themselves.
Does that kid match the typical, like when you send the thing to the teachers, and kids are like this?
So
Is that the sort of thing that would hit?
the letter was drafted 2 or 3 years ago, so I have to actually look at what it is because it's sent out anyway. But I think one of the things what you're speaking about, I mean, it would catch the kid with 180 IQ who's performing average, but I think what you really want is that kids needs to be met in class, and I think what needs to happen for that to be met in class is that we have to teach better, and we have to become better teachers, and none of this is being met after school, and I guess that's my frustration, is that we spend all of this identifying this process for identification on what happens after school, and whether we identify or not, if we don't change our teaching, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, I think we have to talk about what we're doing in school, and I think that's what Kathy wants us to do. So that's where I am in terms of how I feel about coming here. is that I want to talk about what we do as teachers and how we can become better teachers. So I know the parent piece is separate.
No,
but
I work on that at home.
And I think that's sort of why we have RTI and all that process, we have those conversations.
But with RTI, I mean, at our school, math is not even entered into the formula, and we're only focused on language arts and low performing kids in language arts. And so it doesn't really touch upon, we don't touch upon behavior, we don't touch upon,
That's because we're in the initial stages of RTI, this is the
So-
next step.
okay, because,
We're just doing RTI at a very low level right now. So I agree with Vern, it's more about we need to start educating the teachers and also the instruction needs to get better.
I can get behind that.
Well, that's where I'd like us to go, because I think that's really
I
important.
mean, we're just really, bottom line, we just want everyone to have their needs met, right? So, you know, and challenge them, and I think, you know, that's an ongoing process. And we're gonna, you know, like you said, we might, you know, we're not gonna catch everyone, we're gonna try our best, right? Because, I mean, there's no perfect test. It's gonna take, you know, a lot of expertise around the issue that's gonna solve the problem. It's not gonna be one test or one identification process, it's gonna be us working together for a
I think-
solution.
And I think it'll take all of these different representatives of the school sites communicating what's the rationale behind these changes, because I think my biggest fear is I don't want this distilled to a new parent saying, oh, where's another school that district got rid of Kate? It's on camera. So I think that, you know, because when you
He's already been elected.
when you look at the rationale for each of these moves, it's like, you know, I think most parents would be, look, I support this. This is going to be better. We're going to be able to focus more on providing services, and but I think that we have to be savvy and active about communicating that, because otherwise parents will the short messages, it's classification's gone, and so I think that's all of us have to be proactive in our school sites, because otherwise that message spreads real quickly among parents that
Yeah.
Well, so
I
the-
think the leaders in the parent community need to make it really clear that this is a transition toward what we want, which is that there be support of the teachers and of the students in the school day, and not this sort of distraction and financial and energy distraction after school.
By the way, did Palo Alto or Los Altos or Sunnyvale replace their gate with something like what we're talking about?
Not that
Because all I heard was they got rid
about
of
their
it.
self just had some sort of program, some fancy name, strategic something, I don't know, I'd be curious to ask them what they do.
Those
They
Celtics
used to
just
have
started a formal gate advisory committee among the parents because there was such concern.
Yeah,
It just started in the last 3
Well,
months.
another thought I was thinking too, it seems like, some of our meetings, that we have a mixture of parents and teachers. Sometimes the conversation, it's easy to go with the parent saying, okay, let's have a parent, figure out a parent ed night or something like that. But once the teachers start talking about, okay, what are some ways we could increase better teacher practices, I think the parents kind of get lost and thinking, I'm not sure how to, contribute towards that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether or not it's helpful to have, say, 2 separate meetings, but I mean, it seems like 2 groups that have a different focus. Because, I don't know, so that's just a thought, because it seems like we're not really, and we don't get enough teachers here from each school, we don't get enough parents from each school to kind of make it happen either. So I don't know what's the best use of our time.
I think we'll have to take that up as we start the process. I think the goal will be recruiting as we move forward, and trying in recruiting a parent and a teacher, and then I think that will be the job of the advisory as we move forward next year to decide how does that work best. Do we need to split up sometimes? Do we need to be in big groups? How is that going to work best and meet the needs of the group so that we can be the most productive?
How could one of us dive into the numbers? And you're talking about, like, let's look at the data. How could I find out what the correlation is between either of the tests you gave, the scores on either the equals or the same test, and CST, to find out if they're all in a line together, they're perfectly correlated, then maybe the test is not telling us anything we don't know. If there's some material number of scores that aren't correlated, then what are we gonna do about that? Or do we care or not care? And then how do we?
Correlated how? By the number that we picked?
I mean, you just plot them. then I mean, what I'd be interested to know is then what do we do? Do we pretend that they're correlated and move forward, or do we test some kids to try to find them? Do we test underachieving kids to see which ones to focus on with extra special attention versus the normal during the day? You know, which ones do we have to like just stick somebody on until they feel it wakes up, or not?
I will look into if I can
How's that
give
work?
access to it.
Okay. I don't want the name. And it doesn't need to be just Stevenson. I'm happy to do it across. Like I can use Excel and run this and share it back with you as a group, and we can find out how these numbers connect.
I will look into that for you and I'll get back to you. Okay, we're 33 minutes past our
It's only 5:30.
meeting
So
time. Yes.
usually runs till 6, I guess. I have a meeting in Kinder at 6, 4 minutes ago.
You're late.
I am. It's true.
So at this point, we're going to adjourn, and I will get back to you
Okay.
about that information. Okay? Thank you, thank
They're gonna
you.
shoot Tuesdays, maybe to start out the year.
Is this the last
Oh, yeah.
one of this year?
Yeah,
This
it
is
is.
the last one of this year.
When's the next one? August, September?
I will probably schedule it early.
This is the last one.
I will probably schedule it early, because I will want
Because
this
for next,
committee
I think it's like,
Yeah.
we'll start thinking about like what the teaching thing, that's what you're saying, like how we plan for next year, it's like the very first meeting will be, how do we set up?
The first meeting isn't until September, and schools are going in a month.
Everybody can
You have a-
fly to their camps and
You're late too?
Well, I'm late to see my children and
Oh.
help them with their homework. No, go
Yeah.
ahead, I
Yeah,
can text
I'll
you.
get it.
I'm definitely late for that.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
You got information, and I know this is my decision, so I applied to this committee, so I know I will be here.
Well, not with the students, it doesn't on that, you know, Ivy League.
Some of them are after school. Some of them only after school.
Yeah.
People from our district.
Is it starting on like 5:30 on Thursdays?
No, it's on Tuesdays, every Tuesday.
Just that one day.
So yeah, so we, every time we want to be at every meeting.
Yeah.
So it's 3 to 10 or 3 to 10, until school's out, and then till 4:15.
Curriculum, it's not
They
the
came
content,
from-
they have packets of like the
Show,
Stevenson.
this came from Harvard,
When
this is a teacher, but Harvard.
No, I don't think so. I don't. I have no idea what iCloud. I mean, they have. I just thought all the stuff that they did get the whole. Because they brought it over. I wasn't there when I first came. I came 3 years. And the final year is when I first started. When I was there, it was after school program, which I think is how you started.
I never heard that. I never heard that Pac might have imported something.
Oh, when they used to do market day, which we no longer do as a old school, we only do it in 3rd grade, because it's the only grade that is, it's a standard for it. But the whole school is doing it, it's a big, broad thing, we've done some other community activities, because we like the idea that it's about community, but it's just hard to say all that work and building things, when students are reading below grade level, it's really hard to, so we do other things. Yeah, so we have field day and, which doesn't require any effort, and it is students' part, it's not like you go out there and you do community. We have this 5th grade soccer,
Well, I meet with her.
like visitation, 5th grade soccer meetings with the teachers or challenge. Which
okay.
don't require
Friday
a
evening.
class,
Well, there's, yeah, definitely
which
that.
is what we
Our
really
daytime
are
is
basic.
like.
But market day
Yeah.
is, I spent so much time painting beads for 4th grade because we did the gold rush, painting
everyone
beads,
sign
flapping
in?
sand, all that stuff, and it turned out like a lot of trash, to be quite honest, like,
I don't like,
market day.
yeah, I would go for that.
It's a really wasteful event, I found, on campus.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed
Dumpsters
it.
full of
It was a
stuff.
good
To me, and then
community
we'll make sure
builder,
you get a
it
flyer
just
and
wasn't,
get it out.
for me, the most efficient use of my time, which,
Yeah, that sounds
in
great.
3rd grade it is.
Yeah,
In
just
3rd
get
grade
it
it's
to me and I
better
can
than that
get on my
already.
calendar.
In 4th grade, so we're going out of our way to make gold rush.
I went to Coloma.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
I think that's where our plan is. We're going to, I have a 4-5 and a 4-5, so we're just doing the 5th grade curriculum. So it's only two silver
Already sorted, did one, they have, all the parents taught.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, we
that's
don't
fine.
want a business
I'd be happy
Because
to
they
do
have
that.
to do a popular presentation.
I would.
One.
Well, they, because
I would start, I would let her,
so they can
no, she
collaborate.
has
And that's
access
what
to
we
my
thought.
calendar and she sets meetings for me.
I
That's
have
really
parents.
good.
We
It's
have to do
good.
it financially, one year.
Crazy.
I
So
was
yeah,
scared.
so I think we can
That's how
plan
it
for
was
Anna.
my old
Yeah.
teacher.